Hey guys, before we get into the coverage of our big FIBA event, go ahead and do me a favor and like, share, and subscribe so you can see this channel grow so we can do more videos like this and keep you in the know of the high school and recruiting basketball world. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Prospects Corner brought to you by the Traveling Hoopers. Today we are covering the standouts from the FIBA 16 game. We're going to do a part 1 and a part 2. Part 1 is going to focus on Team USA, which I was able to watch all of the games and go really in depth. The second video is going to be about the international prospects and where they stack up and any notable names coming out of that group for each country. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the USA prospects. All right, we're going to be breaking these guys down into 3 categories. The first one is going to be standouts, which is going to have 4 prospects. Then we're going to go into consistent producers, which is going to have 6. Then we're going to go into guys who produced in limited minutes, and it's going to be just 2 guys in that category. Our first guy up out of the group of standouts is going to be Robert Dillingham, the 5-star 2023 guard. And guys, he goes by Rob with the shifts, and it is very obvious why and how accurate that nickname is. He creates so much separation with all of his shots, with all of his moves, and he did it really well on the world stage. We're talking about a guy who averaged almost 16 points a game and led Team USA in assists at 6.2. Not only did he break the scoring record in the championship game with 31 points, but he also broke the assist record with 12 assists in pool play. Robert Dillingham kind of just showed off the complete package. We all know he's one of the better scorers in the class, but the fact that he's really rounding out into a legit point guard who can go ahead and not only get his own bucket, but get his teammates involved, Robert Dillingham is going to be a really special prospect. Some of his standout games were his 19.6 assist game against the Dominican Republic, who also has a pretty nice squad. And then he posted 17 and 12 on Chile. But the most impressive game had to be his 31 points against Argentina, which is also probably the second best squad of the field. And they have the size and the strength to actually guard someone like Robert Dillingham. He pulled it out and he scored like he did in a game where we needed him to do that the most. The 2 games prior were a bit off for him, where he scored 6 against Mexico and then 8 against Canada. He pulled it out in a clutch situation where there was the most pressure and the most eyes during the entire tournament. Something I'm really impressed by with the 2023 guard. Dillingham showed that he could score anywhere on the court, and we're talking about off the dribble, going to the lane, catch and shoot threes. He did it all. And it was really impressive to see him get out in transition and be able to hit those guys who were running alongside with him. Another thing that really impressed me for a guy who isn't exactly known as a distributor, he kept his assist to turnover ratio very low. We're talking about 4 assists to 1 turnover throughout the entire tournament. And it was a very turnover prone event for every team. Robert Dillingham's big performance not only got him on the All-Star 5 team, but also got him the tournament MVP, which was well deserved considering how big of a performance he had to close out a very close game against Argentina. Our next guy up is going to be Ronald Holland out of Duncanville, Texas. And guys, wherever Ron goes, he produces. That energy, that motor is all there. And now listed at an inch taller at 6'9", he is a complete defensive force unto himself, especially on the world stage. During USA's press, Ron was the guy defending the baseline, and when I tell you he created so much pressure and so many turnovers throughout the entire game that whether he was gifted the assist or not, he had a role in rushing the pass or getting the deflection. Ron was consistent on that. And another place where he was just an absolute beast was on the boards, especially the offensive boards. We're talking about 6 a game against some of the world's best under 16 guys. And it was just really good to see him do all this. Some of his best games were his 22-9 against the Dominican Republic, where he didn't even play in the second half because he was thrown out of the game on, let's say, questionable call. He had 16 and 16 against Canada, who has 7'6" Olivier Roux, another guy who's 6'9", and Stephen Osai. His 21 and 12 against Argentina in the final game was also a really, really clutch performance. And to be completely honest with you, I can list almost every single game he played in as a standout performance. We're talking about 24 and 7 in the opening game. He did everything on every single game. And what's probably the most impressive, he continues to show growth on the offensive end. Yes, it's a lot of putbacks and dunks, but on the occasion he steps out to the perimeter and still not a shooter. But the fact that he's so long and athletic and has a quick first step, he's taking bigs and some wings off the dribble instantly. And once he gets downhill, your chances of stopping Ron at scoring at the rim very low. But, you know, you could always foul him and see him knock down his free throws, which he did at a pretty nice rate. Ron just brings intensity on every single possession, and it's something that you really just can't take away. And at the world stage, it's something you almost can't calculate for. There were very few people that can match his intensity or his athleticism. That's part of the reason why he averaged 2.5 steals and 1.2 blocks. And a lot of those blocks came in transition where he was just hawking guys down and then swatting it away at the rim. Ron's really impressive. He's going to go back to Duncanville, compete for another state title, play some games on national TV, and I believe they are the favorites in Texas to go ahead and repeat for Ron's third state title. Overtime Elite's very own Jalen Lewis was actually one of my stock risers during the event. He was originally slotted off as a consistent contributor during pool play, but as the championship went on and he really found his rhythm, he became one of the standouts. At 6'11", he is a nice face-up forward with a strong jump shot. He made a 3 in every single game except the one against the Dominican Republic. And on 12 attempts from 3, he shot 58%. Jalen Lewis is just a really good face-up forward prospect. I'm talking about the ability to shoot off turnarounds, make shots in the mid-range, even hit a Dirk-like fadeaway over a guy during the Argentina game. He's just really impressive overall. He can rebound, he blocked shots. He was actually one of the team's leading blockers at almost 2 a game. Because he does play a little bit more on the perimeter, there's not a lot of volume on his rebounds, but it's still, he's a guy who averaged 12 points and 7 rebounds throughout the entire tournament, which is really good considering how many bigs were on this team and how many minutes he played. Lewis was really productive in his 18 minutes on the floor. There were times where he faded away a little bit, but when he made noise, he made a lot of it, and it was in a really smooth, skilled fashion. He even had a chance to take a few guys off the dribble, and when he did, he finished in the paint with authority. A couple of standout games for Jalen Lewis was his 14 and 12 against Puerto Rico, who again is another team that's pretty nice coming out of South America, and he also had 24 and 4 against Mexico. And that's where you could really see how good of a three-point shooter he is, where he made 2 of his 3 attempts. Rounding out our list of standouts is going to be Jalen Curry, the point guard out of North Carolina. And he's currently listed as a 4-star on ESPN. And guys, Jalen Curry is just really good at basketball. Between his speed, his handle, his passing ability, he's everything you want really in a point guard. Jalen Curry was actually one of the 2 guys on this team that could really just be a floor general and slow it down in the half court and run an offense. I really like that he's creative with the ball because of his speed. He just gets by people. He has a good burst off the dribble. And one thing you're gonna learn about me by watching these videos is I love a guy who can pass. And a guy who can pass on this team is Jalen Curry. He averaged 5.7 assists throughout the tournament, and he was only 3 assists shy from being tied with our leader, Robert Dillingham. And a lot of his passes came in transition. They were nice, they were crafty. It was a lot of things that he created on his own. And he's just a really good playmaker at this point. And again, because of that speed, he's also one of our statistical leaders in steals. And I don't mean just for the team, I mean the entire tournament at almost 4 a game. He's a really speedy guy who can break down defenders and get to the lane. He showed that several times during half-court possessions. He's an incredibly unselfish young point guard. He finds guys wherever they are. He had 13 and 10 against Mexico, and then he stuffed the stat sheet with 12.6 assists and 4 rebounds against Chile. He's just a really solid overall guard who I'm excited to see more of during the season. Now we step into our next group, which are the consistent producers, and it's not like these guys didn't show up every single game. They did. They just weren't as loud as our 4 standouts who consistently produced double digits or double-digit rebounds or just whatever made them stand out the most. These guys were still really good in their own right. Our first guy up is going to be Bryson Tucker. In pool play, Bryson Tucker performed really well, averaging almost 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and shooting 40% from 3. As the tournament went on, his production slowed down a little bit, but that did not stop him from contributing as a defensive presence and also a rebounder. Throughout the entire tournament, he was a really good shooter as well from the wing and from the corners. Standing 6'6", Tucker did have the size and mobility to switch between wings and guards pretty easily. And the thing that impressed me the most is definitely going to be his shooting. If not for an 0 for 4 performance during the championship game with Argentina, we're looking at a guy who shot 40% from 3 the entire tournament. He was a really solid 3-and-D prospect for Team USA. He had his fair share of steals, almost averaging 1 a game. But most importantly, he proved that he can slide his feet and guard some of the best wings we have available in North and South America. Bryson Tucker came out scoring really well during the first 2 games. He had 17 points against Puerto Rico and he had 22 against the Dominican Republic. Our next guy up out of the group is going to be Kylan Boswell, who really surprised me as a really good defensive guard. Not only is he a playmaker, but he locked guys up on the perimeter. I'm talking about pretty much picking them up at half court and really getting into the international lead guards. He was a big reason why the United States came out of the game against Canada with the W. He shot 5 of 10 from 3-point land, and he really got into Mikal Time, who was one of the better scorers and playmakers in the entire tournament. The 6'2", 2023 guard was also third leading assist man on Team USA with 4.5, almost 5 assists a game. He just had a really solid overall game where he supplied shooting, another guy who could just kind of settle the team down when everything was running and we had guys streaking up the floor. Boswell was one of those guys that could find them and make impressive alley-oop passes, the skip pass, everything. Boswell is just a really solid prospect, and this was a good international showing for him overall. Boswell also did a really good job of taking care of the ball. He limited turnovers, only having 7 throughout the entire tournament. In several games where he didn't have any at all, but still produced as a passer. Also like Boswell's shot creation, even though it happened in limited possessions. He hit a couple nice step back threes. He also had some floaters in the mid-range. They had good touch. Jeremy Fears continues to be one of my favorite point guard prospects out of the 2023 class. The kid's just really heady, he's really smart. And every time I see him play, my comparison of Kyle Lowry just seems more and more obvious. He does a lot of little things to just make the other team a little angry at him. Whether that's just getting in front of someone who's already moving, or when he has the ball, getting in front of a defender to cause fouls. He does little things that are just really intelligent. He knows how to move on the court. He knows where to be. He's a solid defender. He has intensity on the floor as well. As they got deeper and deeper into the tournament, Fears got more playing time and he started to produce more. At the same time, he's also showing his athleticism. His body's looking better. He had a couple nice dunks in transition. And I'm just overall really impressed by what this kid is showing us. He went to 6.7 points per game in pool play to almost 9 a game, which isn't a super boost, but considering how deep this roster is and how few and far between the minutes came for everyone. It's a nice jump when you're only talking about 4 or 5 more minutes of play. His overall scrappy play is another reason why we were able to slow down Mikal Tyne, along with Boswell's play. Those two getting in and after Tyne really helped slow down him on defense. And at the same time, Fears had his best scoring output with 18 against Canada. He just is another guy that shows up in big times and knows how to play the game of basketball and is pretty much a floor general anytime he's on the court. And earlier I talked about how Jalen Curry was one of those guys who could really slow this team down and make them run a half-court set. Jeremy Fears is the other guy who makes this team slow down and have a consciousness during the flow of the game. Justin McBride is going to be our next guy up when we talk about consistent producers. McBride played really well in pool play. We're talking about a game against the Dominican Republic, who has some solid bigs. He posted 14 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks. But really what impresses me the most is the energy he has for rebounds and his ability to kick out that long baseball pass for assists down court. He did that so many times, and anytime he's battling for boards, you have to get back on defense because he is looking to go ahead and get the ball down the court. He even showed a few times that he can push the ball himself, be a contributor in that fashion. Outside of that, he was one of the best finishers on the team. We're talking about a guy who can now score above the rim with consistency. He can battle you down low. He uses his weight well. He's now standing 6'8", and I really think this is going to be a breakout year for my Oak Hill Academy. Even though they have Jalen Reed, who's emerging as a national talent, they're going to be a really good front court together. As the tournament went along, McBride did lose a few of those minutes, and I think that's more about the competition than what the team thought of him, because he was still really good and doing the same things. During pool play, we were looking at a guy who's averaging 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game. For the entire tournament, he averaged 8 points, 6 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks per game, which just shows he's a consistent lone defender down in the paint. He was a tad foul heavy, but to be completely honest with you, I think that's going to be something that's easily ironed out at his time during Oak Hill Academy, where we're going to be looking at a guy who is going to be a really good rebounder, defender, and passer for a guy who's 6'8". Plus, he's already showed his jump shot in a few other venues. Like I said in the article I wrote for Prep Hoops, when you put him on the elbow and just let him work down, he's going to be a really solid contributor for you wherever the 2023 forward decides to go for a college or pro experience. Our next guy up is going to be another guy out of Texas. We're talking about 2024 Liam McNeeley. And when we're talking about a guy who just knows his role and is going to produce at whatever position you put him at, Liam's one of those guys. He was a consistent three-point shooter throughout the entire tournament. At 6'8", he was a really versatile defender who could guard positions 2 through 4 with fluidity. I saw him switch on to wings and power forwards in the same position, and he really didn't skip a beat. Some games he was on as a scorer where he notched 14 points. Other games he was on as a rebounder where he grabbed 10 boards. McNeeley just knows how to work within any system. He's also a good passer. He's just a heady player who's extremely moldable going into his sophomore year with John Paul II. I'm just really impressed at what he could do and how well he finds space within any team. Another thing that's been undersold for McNeeley is going to be his physicality. When we're talking about rebounding, he's okay with taking the bump and going up and getting it and challenge you that way. He's also going to be able to take the bump as a driver, or when he's finishing around the rim, he's okay with giving that contact first. I just like McNeeley's overall package, and I'm really impressed to see what he does over the next 3 years of his high school career. When we look at his averages, it's clear that he's a stat sheet stuffer. We're talking about 8 points, 8 rebounds, 3 steals, a block and a half per game during pool play. And as the tournament progressed, he dropped down a little bit to 6 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 assists a game. Still a really good stat line, and a guy who's just going to find a way to contribute at any way possible. And he does this all while not forcing anything on the offensive end. Everything comes naturally. He just finds it within the flow of the game. Closing out our consistent producers category is going to be 5-star Ian Jackson, the 2024 wing. And the 6'6" guy can absolutely go. He was one of the best transition scorers we had at the entire event. In fact, he broke the original scoring record with 30 points. A lot of those points did come in transition. At 6'6", his athleticism and speed is like very obvious. He loves to get out and go. In pool play, he averaged almost 17 points a game, 3 rebounds, and close to 2 assists. Again, as the tournament went on and the game slowed down a little bit, his scoring output went to about 10 points a game, 2 rebounds, and close to an assist per contest. In just the second game out, he tried to posterize a guy from the Dominican Republic. He showed a nice mid-range game as well, only if it was on limited shots. Ian Jackson is one of those guys that I'm going to be monitoring very closely in the 2024 class. Between his size, his athleticism, his speed, and the fact that he wants to play defense already and has the energy to do it, he's going to be a guy who's going to have a lot of tools in his bag, and I'm just waiting to see how everything develops when his skill level catches up to his athleticism. Jackson is also a pretty decent slasher in the half court, and he shows a nice handle as well. Getting into our final category is going to be our limited minute producers, and our first guy up is going to be Florida resident Ryan Jones Jr., also known as RJ, the 6'9" kid. Is definitely going to have a lot of stretch forward to his game. Though he didn't have a ton of floor time, we're looking at a guy who shot 44% from 3, even though it was on limited attempts. And Jones just got better and better as the competition went on. There were some games where he didn't play a lot. Do understand that he is a 2024 prospect who was extremely talented. Just looking at his size, his overall ability to play, I just think the game was a little too fast for him during these segments, and that is not a knock on him. He's still really young. He did have a really good game against Mexico where he scored 16 points, had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and made 2 of his 3 3-pointers. I'm officially settled into Florida, and I'm making my recruiting trips for games, and trust me, The Rock, Gainesville, you're going to see me several times to come watch RJ Jones play on a team where he's more of a centerpiece than a throwing guy, because he's really talented, and it's just obvious that he needs a little bit more of a central focus. Though we're looking at a guy who averaged just under 7 minutes a game. He got to the free throw line with pretty good frequency. We're talking about a guy who could grab offensive boards and then draw fouls on his own. He shot really well from the free throw line on only 9 attempts again, but knocking down 8 of those 9 will give you about a 89% free throw percentage. Closing out our team list and our category list is going to be 2024 guard David Castillo. And I'm just overall impressed at what he can do as a shooter already. David Castillo shot really well from the 3-point line, especially in this final championship game against Argentina, where he made 4 of his 7 3-pointers for a tournament high 14 points. Overall, he's just a really solid point guard prospect who can shoot and also find the open man, whether that's in transition or the half court. For the entire tournament, Castillo shot 47% from the 3-point line of 17 attempts. He showcased a good handle and nice speed in the half court with a few drives to finish at the rim. Overall, Castillo is one of those prospects that I am going to keep an eye on inside of Oklahoma. They usually produce really solid guards, at least over the last couple years that I've been watching. He's already getting the national recognition that surpassed his predecessors before him, so clearly David Castillo is a 2024 guard that we're all going to get really acquainted with as his career goes on. Congratulations to the U.S. for winning their 7th straight gold medal in this particular event. As we close this one out, just to keep in mind, in these all-star type settings, remember that all of these guys are 4 and 5 star prospects in their respective classes. Going to be very, very good on their own. I will check back with you guys on a later video where we'll be covering the international prospects. That's going to be another good list that you guys should tune in for, and that should be coming out within the next couple days. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of this. Go ahead and do the fun stuff of like, sharing, subscribing, tell your friends about us. And thank you again for watching this entire video. We're out, Hoopers.